So today we'll be talking about how cinema is changing in real time. Christopher Nolan's pushing boundaries with his IMAX idea, Netflix bending the rules, and how studios are fumbling big reboots. Let's get into it.
Uncle Kevin's got the mic. We're diving deep. Business, film, and culture. Secrets to keep. Pull up a chair. It's a ride, not a chore. Conversations with Uncle Kevin. Big ideas we're always revving. Talking shop and spilling gold. Stories fresh, never old.
So, first thing is first, continuing from where we were last week, where we spoke about Sydney Sweeney's film that flopped, we have another one, The Running Man. So, The Running Man, this is a film starring Glenn Powell. I think there was, I don't want to butcher his name, Domingo, and all those guys. It was made by Paramount. It just came out, I believe, last week. And over the weekend, people were saying it had disastrous results with an opening of 17 million domestic, 28 million global, which is said to be a disastrous results because it had a budget of $110 million. The film was outperformed by a lower budget film, Now You See Me, Now You Don't. So people have been saying, does this mean Glenn Powell is not a superstar? Just like we spoke about last week, a lot of what's been happening with these movies is the marketing has been poor. I didn't know about The Running Man. I think I saw a trailer when I was in theater, but I didn't know what it was about. And when I watched it, it wasn't something that I was like, yo, I want to watch this. And I think one of the challenges you have with these reboots is there's an assumption that that audience is gonna go watch, which probably they will. But I think the biggest audience that you can get right now to go watch your films is the Gen Zs and then millennials a little bit. And if you don't have that target audience coming to your theater to watch it, it's going to flop. So some of the key points of why the film flopped was they say leadership change at Paramount, old guard slate inherited. So this film was greenlit before the partnership happened for Paramount, like before the major happened. So that could have caused a lot of, so since it was already in the pipeline, that means the vision that those guys had for the film had to go away. And by the time, they had to continue with it because the process already started. But I guess the new guys were not that passionate about the film. The marketing department was shook up. So apparently the head marketing guy left Paramount and then they brought in a new guy, but he came in a little too late. That new guy was the one who was responsible for the marketing of the Dune films, the marketing of other films when he was at Warner Brothers. My challenge with this argument is, I understand that the buck stops with the leader, but like these departments are there, right? Like these people are not dumb. Like these people should have done something. I was looking at the true trailer. So there's a trailer before his time and the trailer on his time, and whilst they're different, none of them for me were appealing. None of them were like, come watch this film. Like the film wasn't enticing when I watched the trailers. And then a broader trend is 80 sci-fi reboots keep failing. Tron Ares, Blade Runner 2049. I don't think Blade Runner 2049 we can say it flopped. I don't remember what the numbers were, but I definitely started knowing about Blade Runner many years after it was done. And that was mainly because of the cinematography rather than the story. And what I think with Blade Runner, I think a lot of people liked Blade Runner. So I don't know why in this article they're saying it flopped. But the main thing I can say about these 1980s films flopping, I think the challenge that these films are having is because they're IPs, and this is something we spoke about in another video. The problem with owning IPs, this is something Disney has, is there's an assumption that's made that this, since we already own the IP and since the IP is already out there, people already appreciate it, right? So people already want to watch these films. People want these reboots. But I think what these people tend to forget is they were young when these films were being made. So that was the time they were growing up in the 80s, right? So these films have a deep connection to them. And that's why when it's pitched to them, like, oh, let's remake this, it sounds fun. Let's remake The Running Man. Let's remake whatever, Blade Runner. Let's do this. Let's do Tron Ares. The technology is now, imagine how crazy of a film it'll be. And I understand as creatives or as the people involved, they are happy about this. But the challenge that you have is the new audience doesn't know. I wasn't there in the 80s. Gen Zs were not there in the 80s. So you now almost have to do what they did in the 80s to rebuild the IP, right? So you almost have to sell the IP again. You have to market it from the bottom up. Like, what is it? What is the Running Man? What's the story about? Why should I care? It shouldn't just be, oh, you know, that Arnold Schwarzenegger movie that came out many, many years ago. We're redoing it because not many people know. Not many people are big Arnold Schwarzenegger fans. And I guess the idea is the parents or the grandparents will bring their kids to come watch it because and whatever. But the problem is that's not really how it works, right? Like if you look at a film like Now You See Me, Now You Don't, for my generation, the first Now You See Me is the reason I'll go watch this one just to see what happened, even from the second one, what happened, and the recurring characters, and you know what I mean. Like it's quite easy to see what's happening, and for $110 million film, we already had another 100. I think Sinners was made at 90 million, and it ended up performing very well. That shows us what's happening nowadays, whereby people want to be engaged with stories that are written for them at their time and that have pull. And a lot of this we will see in the marketing of the film compared to the Running Man. So I didn't know what the Running Man was. I don't want to say not every cult classic needs a revival. I think if you're gonna do IP, if you're gonna do revival, you almost just have to look at it as a new film. But the challenge that you have, I feel, is the people at the top. For them, these IPs are not new stuff. These are things that they're used to. So when it comes to marketing them, they market them as nostalgia. But for the new audience, you gotta capture us. You gotta tell us what it is we're coming to watch. Because I don't even understand what's happening. Because when I was watching the trailers, like for this video, it reminded me of The Purge, but in this case, it's different because The Running Man is essentially, I'm assuming it's about a guy who, because I think in the trailer it says you have 24 hours, and if you don't get caught, you don't get killed, you win X amount of money, and then the game is rigged and whatever. So then there was room to build it and to actually sell in terms of the themes of the film. What is it about, And yeah, I think this film would have been a very great opportunity for Glenn Powell's star to rise, right? But this won't be the end of it. Christopher Nolan and the Odyssey are redefining IMAX. So Christopher Nolan's Odyssey is the first narrative shot entirely on an IMAX camera, which is something that always shocks me because when you're watching Oppenheimer, what I feel with IMAX, at some point, I feel these guys are going to run out of things to say because it almost feels like a lie. Like with Sinners, it was shot on IMAX and then whatever. But I think at a certain point, these guys keep playing with the technicalities to which it's becoming boring. But they say this is the first narrative shot entirely on IMAX without any other camera. So for this camera, they finally used an IMAX blimp casing to silence the camera. So if you've ever watched any behind the scenes of IMAX, the IMAX camera being used, it's so noisy. And one thing that I picked up when I went to watch Sinners for the first time, I could tell they were using ADR because for me with ADR is always when you're in the theater and the voice is moving but the mouth is not. That's how you can tell like, man, this was not the actual audio from set that they were using, which sometimes can be jarring but then you'd have to have the eye for it. If you're not looking for it, you won't really find it. But in certain cases, I can see it where you're like, man, that's ADR. You know what I mean? And I think that always makes it harder for them because they have to do the work twice, especially in emotional scenes, right? Like if someone is really giving you an emotional performance and you don't capture the audio, then you have to have them come back and do it again. I suppose we could say these people are professionals, but they are people before they're professionals, right? And I think that was always a disadvantage of using an IMAX. So now you're at a point where you can use the camera 1 foot away from an actor's face and get usable audio from that person, and that's using this thing called a blimp. It captures usable whisper level sound, creates intimate performances in a massive format. The film was shot over 2 million feet of film, costing 3 million in raw stock alone. Man, sometimes when you're reading the amount of money that's used to make movies, you're like, $3 million? Man, that's life-changing money, man. It was a 91-day shoot, 3 months to make it. Ooh. I'm told this is like the biggest, 3 months to shoot on film. That's amazing. Nolan's mindset was they were looking for gaps in cinematic culture and doing what hasn't been done. Just looking at this information, I think it opens up more films to be made on the IMAX, especially like because a lot of times when you heard of IMAX, it was always associated with Chris Nolan. And then in the previous years, I know some guys used it. What's his name? I know they used it on Nope, and then they also used it in Sinners. So what this means is now when people are thinking about it, like filmmakers like myself, if I ever got the opportunity of using an IMAX camera, right? Like the thought process is not always gonna be, oh man, sound, like that is no longer a thing that holds you back from using the camera. And I think, yeah, it's important. But the challenge with IMAX cameras is always going to be cost. $3 million, 91 days. I don't think you would need so much, but then also like just the cost. People often say now we live in a time where it's become more accessible and easy to make films. But I think one of the challenges that you have in making films is, you know, the cost, because now it's more of the cost of quality and expectation, right? So if people are watching your film, they want it to compete with the films that they've watched before. Like, why should it not be the same if the technology is readily available? In other news, IMAX versus the theaters, the Narnia controversy. So in the past, it was announced in January this year that Greta Gerwig's Narnia will be shown on IMAX screens for 2 weeks and then goes to Netflix after those 2 weeks. This is something that Netflix does in order to qualify for festivals and to qualify for the Oscars and some awards. This is not a shift in their theatrical strategy, but the only difference is it's only going to be shown on IMAX screens. It's not going to be shown in other formats, which is a problem for other theaters. So there's been a controversy and a fight that has been happening. What's happened is one CEO of a theater, for the founder of U Entertainment, publicly attacked the deal. He stated that what this does, it hamstrings the theaters, right? So if you have a theater and you have an IMAX screen, that can just be one booth or one room, and then you have the rest of the floor not being used. Which a lot of times when you look at different screens, they usually have a lot of films. The film is shown in different screens that allows the theaters to make more money. Whereas with this one, if it's just being shown on IMAX, that means for the theaters they don't get increased revenue, which is a big problem. So gives Greta Gerwig a 2 weeks exclusive. IMAX gives Greta Gerwig's Narnia a 2 week exclusive global run. Netflix says not a shift from theatrical strategy, release tactic for publicity plus awards. But exhibition community is furious. Founder of U Entertainment publicly attacked the deal. IMAX allegedly threatened cinemas that don't comply. So I'm assuming they told them, if you don't comply, we won't give you our technology or we'll increase whatever. Because this is also just about negotiation, your ability to negotiate. If you don't have IMAX screens within your theater, then people might not come for those IMAX releases. Other PLFs, Dolby Cinema XD blocked from showing in the film. IMAX represents less than 1% of global screens. No longer the dominant tech leader, Dolby Vision Atmos now many filmmakers preferred premium experience. So the question here is IMAX gatekeeping the film? I think that what they're doing is, because their brand has slowly grown in this from a business perspective, this is beneficial to them, because Narnia is going to be a big film when it comes out, especially given it's Greta Gerwig's next movie after Barbie. And I think for them, this allows them, when you have an option to say go watch a film, an IMAX film might cost $30, $40, and then just a regular screen is going for $10. Depending on what type of experience you want to have, some people will just choose to go pay $10, and that doesn't benefit IMAX. And I think for them to get an exclusive movie on their screens is something that will be very useful to them, to where it's not just a premium experience, but it's something that's forcing people to come watch. But then because you have that 2 week run, I don't really know how beneficial that is, especially at how many people can come watch, and how many people these people service. Another thing we have to ask is, I think, does Netflix care about theaters or just awards and campaigns? I think that Netflix doesn't care about theaters because that's not where their revenue is driven from, especially knowing they have to share with the theaters. So for them, going to theaters is not something that I think they really care about. But if the numbers, especially with this, if it makes them crazy amount of money, they may reconsider it and start pushing. But then the challenge that you have is, if you're putting your movies in the theater and then people watch it, how much value does that mean for your platform? Which is why they're investing in original content like Nania and trying to be taken seriously, especially working with such a big director. The other question is IMAX trying to monopolize prestige releases? I don't think they're trying to monopolize. I just think they're trying to position their brand in a different way. And if this makes money, then they know that the next releases will be happening. I still prefer just going to watch Dolby Cinema than, to watch IMAX, because for me, you have to travel to find an IMAX screen, whereas like this is really available. So I'll just go watch that because I don't really see the difference, to be honest. The fight between PLF formats, IMAX versus Dolby versus others. What does this mean for the future of theatrical releases? There is a danger that there'll be an exclusive pipeline that's made through just IMAX, but the challenge that you have with that, like I said, is how many people really want to watch films on IMAX? Like, is that a thing? I saw with Sinners, like a lot of people were going to watch, and that was mainly because of how Ryan Coogler spoke about it. But I don't really know, like, if it's worth it like that, like especially if the cost is double the price of a single ticket, especially in the economy we are in right now. So that'll be interesting to see, like, what do these people think about it. The danger of creating an exclusive pipeline, the fight between PLF, the contradiction. Greta Gerwig says Dolby Atmos is a preferred experience. Yeah, I feel like with Dolby Atmos, just because the experience feels immersive, especially at the theater that I go to. So I can see why she prefers that, especially for the music and sound and stuff like that. Because in an IMAX screen, the challenge is if you're at the bottom and the screen is so huge, it's not a fun experience to watch. But at other theaters, even if you're in front, like, it's very enjoyable to watch the film. Magazine Dreams, the release that almost never was. So this film, the reason I want to speak about it, it came out in 2023 at Sundance as a critical darling, it was seen to, it had good projections of what could happen with it. I think it's a film that would have done well in theaters. It's a film that would have done well on streaming, especially just seeing the little scenes, snippets that I see on social media of people just looking for things they enjoyed from it. The challenge that it had is, unfortunately, because of Jonathan Major's case, the people who were supposed to distribute it dropped it. And I think, whilst I understand what was happening with his case, and at that time maybe made it tricky to promote it, because then you'll be seen as if you're supporting whatever he did. The challenge that you have is, it wasn't his film. You know what I mean? Like, it's not his. There's a guy who directed. There's a lot of people who worked on this film who could have benefited from the film coming out. The director, the production designer, the costumers, the cinematographer, all these people worked on this thing for it to come out, and then for it to not come out because of the main actor's case, I just felt like that wasn't it, man. Like, I felt it wasn't a good move, and now the film is not even making enough money. It had a budget of 8 million, and in the US it only made 1.17 million box office. Now they're releasing it in the UK to see what might happen. But the challenge that you already have with the film is it's coming with negative press, when it could have had so much positivity just going ahead with it, especially because everybody saw the video, of what happened. So I think that, I don't know, like, with film, we're in a phase where it's difficult to understand, can we separate the art from the artist? If we can't, what can be done in that case of, like, these guys have invested $8 million into this thing, and to have it thrown away, man. And the other thing that, I just made a film, being an indie, it's hard to raise money. And the fact that you have it for your film to go away because of an actor's scandal. For me, most of the topics that we touched on, as a DP, knowing what Christopher Nolan and Hoyt are doing, it gives me hope, especially just in the future when I start to work with bigger budgets, because I think the more you use different technologies, the more you appreciate what the camera can do and you appreciate what's possible. When you look at when I go to an IMAX screen, like when I watched Oppenheimer, it was impressive what I was watching, but I could tell that these guys are just walking into it, right? Like there's more people than Hoyt, and I believe different people come up with different ways of using the camera, just like we saw in Sinners, how they did that, how they went for the wide lens, vista lenses, and stuff like that, and how they combine that, and then so it's gonna open more doors, especially now that it is they've managed to find a way of silencing it. I don't know if they can make it smaller, but I guess with technology, you never know. It may develop and become smaller and smaller, and at a certain point, more people can be able to use IMAX cameras for their films. So I think it opens up the doors for other people to come in. One of the main things that I think as indie filmmakers, why marketing is important. One of the things that we've identified, especially in the past few podcasts we've done, is that marketing is critical, and it's critical to how a film performs. And this is something that I touched upon in another episode where we spoke about the idea of product orientation. Because film is essentially product oriented, it's not market oriented. So a lot of films are not made because the audience want them. They're made because an artist has an idea, somebody has a vision, the numbers say this film is going to make X amount of dollars. The challenge you have with that is once you make a product like that, you have to build anticipation. You have to build anticipation. You have to convince people to want to watch it, and you have to know these things. And for companies like Paramount, they have the access to the tools and technology and data to know how to actually promote a film. When I look at a film like one bit after another, that film, when I saw the trailer the first time, I wanted to watch it. And the one thing with trailers is sometimes you watch a trailer and it's so good and you're disappointed when you're watching the film. Or sometimes you realize the trailer showed you the whole film and you're also disappointed afterwards. But at least it got you to leave your house and go to the theater to watch the film. And I think that it's not just trailers. It's nowadays it's the social media. It's posters. It's everything. I remember Ballerina. You'd walk around and on the bus, you'd see Ballerina coming out. You'd see all these things. And I think with the Running Man, they actually had a massive opportunity of things that they could have done to make it impressive. You could have Glenn Powell pop up and do running. I don't know whatever is happening in the Running Man. You could do those things and just put teasers, because this is such a big film. That's a big sci-fi that has a big feel to it, but it just feels like the marketing was non-existent. And I think we almost always have to learn the importance of marketing. Unfortunately, this is the most disregarded department in an organization, but without them, you end up getting a lot of results like this. Some lessons that indie filmmakers can steal from these studio failures. I think the first thing is story always is your story has to be bigger than the actors, but your actors matter too. And what that means is with the Running Man, it has big actors. When I see Coleman Domingo, when I see Glenn Powell, when I see these people in the trailer, it grabs my attention. But the next question is, what's the story about? And then it doesn't make sense. Like a lot of the things that they're showing it just seems like you're having fun, right? And for me, depending on the mood that I'm in that day, because it reminds me a lot of Mad Max. Like that's the feeling it gives me. But at least with Mad Max, it made you want to go watch it, right? Even with Furiosa, it made you want to go watch it, and that's what was in the trailers. And I feel like from this, what we can learn is you almost want to have a very great story, and then you want to have great actors, because good actors, what they do is they grab the attention of your audience, and then your trailer, your marketing, and whatever pulls in people to come watch the film at the theater. So something that we can learn, especially indie filmmakers, if you cannot get big actors, make sure the story is compelling and there's a market for it. Once again, in conclusion, man, I feel like a lot of the stories we touched upon today with what Chris Nolan is doing, pushing technology and opening it up, I hope this opens up to more people being able to use the technology. And for IMAX also, because I feel like IMAX is going to be big moving forward. So to be able to use an IMAX camera for an IMAX screen, that'll be impressive. In terms of the war with theaters, I think Netflix is just showing they don't really care about theater like that. And the challenge that you have for these theaters is, the revenue they could be generating. It might get to a point where theaters will refuse to carry Netflix shows in their thing, especially if, we're missing out on potential revenue, right? Because this film could have been shown on different screens and benefited them a lot more. If you found some value in this podcast, subscribe for more deep dives on the art, business, and culture of filmmaking. I'll be seeing you guys in the next one.